Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. Today we're going to do a salary cap primer, a New York Giants salary cap situation primer. We're going to look at 2024, 25, 26, take a look at 3 years, talk about some interesting contract situations, developments, possible cap casualties, free agents, and discuss all of the like because we've been told, Nick, from Joe Shane, one of his big selling points, I think, in returning to the team, is that he's put the Giants in a healthy cap situation. And that will allow them to operate in a healthy way. It will allow them to operate in a way where if they do locate a quarterback they believe they can build their future around, they can actually start building without actually having to be hamstrung by salary cap constraints, bad contracts that are still on the books, dead money from former contracts, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So today we'll find out, is the situation as healthy as he claims it to be? And what are we looking at as we move forward with the Giants salary cap situation? So I think we should start with the now.
Yeah, let's start with the now. It's funny that you mentioned it can actually allow the Giants to build, because I picture the New York Giants as like one of those buildings in Midtown with the scaffolding all up and down. Like they've just been building forever. Like it's never going to actually finish. That's what it seems like being a New York Giants fan, somebody who covers the New York Giants. But hopefully if you locate that quarterback and he can elevate the rest of the team around you, some of these guys we're about to go over, then they can finally remove that scaffolding and be a respectable franchise again.
And one more thing before we get into it, please, if you can do us a favor, it's the dullest time of the offseason besides June, I believe, or July, that range before training camp starts. And we need your help to help grow this page at this time of the year. Please, if you like this page and you're an avid watcher, hit the like button right now. If you're watching, just roll your, hover your hand over your mouse or your keyboard mouse and click like. It's going to take you 2 seconds. It's really going to help us. Leave a comment too. Comment can be about what we talk about, or it could be anything. It could be a question for a future mailbag. But please do us a favor. Help this algorithm grow, or help us get up the algorithm at a time of the year where we need to grow, because we're about to put in a lot of work and put a lot of content out on this page about the draft. You could check back to last year, the year before that, and see the type of content that I'm talking about. We had a video a day each of the last 2 Aprils and a ton of content in March. We had interviews on more than that. We had interviews with draft experts. We had interviews with former quarterbacks. We had our own content, our evaluations based on tape of these players, this or that. We had content about who the Giants are meeting with, pre-draft visits, everything. We basically, anything you could want when it comes to the draft and the Giants, this is going to be your page. And it's proven to be that the last 2 years, but we need help to get eyeballs on the page when that happens. So please do me a favor, hit the like button, write a comment, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, get people to subscribe. The subscribe numbers, we're hoping to get to 10K before the draft. Doesn't look like it's happening unless we get more people. So the only way to do that is by me moving up the algorithm. So it's my pitch. I'll probably start doing it more often because we need your help. And it's as simple as that, really. But Nick, let's start with the 2024 or 2025, I should say, going into the 2025 offseason, their current salary cap situation. Go over with me, Nick, a little primer on, do we have dead cap money on us? How much dead cap money? Do we have cap space? Where does our cap space rank among the rest of the NFL?
First, I think it's important that we actually reflect a little bit on the 2024 season, because the New York Giants ate $82.5 million in dead cap in 2024. Now, context matters. A lot of that was because the Giants parted ways with Daniel Jones. That was $47 million. But this 82.5 number ranked second in the league. A lot of this was absorbed through, like I said, the Jones contract, but it was also because the Giants had acknowledged at that point, hey, we're not going to play Jones because of his contractual stipulations that say there's an injury guarantee and we're not going to screw ourselves later. We're basically punting the season because we suck anyways. Hopefully we'll get the number 1 pick. Giants had the number 1 pick, and then they won a game and now they dropped to 3. I digress. But Jones made up 47 mil of that 82.5. Leonard Williams made up 10 million of that 82.5. And then Adoree Jackson actually made up 2.9, so 3 million of that 82.5, which is funny because when the Giants, I think it was when the Giants restructured Adoree's contract in 2022 when Joe Shane first came in, and then Adoree was not retained, it made that $3 million dead cap hit the New York Giants since the Giants did not retain him. But then, lo and behold, Adoree Jackson's on the roster come week 1 because the Giants needed cornerback help. So it would have been nice if the Giants would have avoided that dead cap number and just brought Adoree back somehow or restructured, but I digress. That did not necessarily happen. And the Giants, I mean, it's safe to say maybe that he was the best outside cornerback the Giants had this year, which is really sad. Is that safe to say?
I think it was based on the tape. I
Which
mean, it's him or
that's sad.
Banks. You could make the case for both. Like Banks, I think, was probably a little bit better in coverage, but not at the point of contact and not at the ball. And he wasn't making any
Yeah.
plays, and he's giving up a lot of big plays.
Exactly. And then Darren Waller also made up 2.5 million of that 82.5 million dead cap hit. Luckily, the dead cap next year is not going to be nearly as bad. It's 27.3 million. Basically, all of it is Daniel Jones with a little bit of Darren Waller. Daniel Jones's dead cap hit in 2025 makes up 8.08% of the Giants' 2025 cap. But once that year is over, 2025, the Daniel Jones contract is removed and it's done. But the 27.3 number right now is the seventh most in the NFL for the 2025 season.
They have the seventh most dead cap, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So the Giants are heading in with the seventh most dead cap. They also have, I believe, let's take a look here. They have the 3, 6. Sorry, that was a little math in my head. They have the 12th most cap space heading into
16th most is what I have.
16th. Okay. I saw it as 12th. Okay. Different number. 16th most cap space, just under 44 million. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So the Giants are working with a decent amount of cap space, I think, heading into this offseason. Not that they're going to want to blow it up and kind of, not that they're going to blow it up and just go all in on free agency, but they have the ability to help their needs if they need to going into this free agency, as I see it right now. Is that correct?
Yes. And the Giants have 47 players under contract. That's tied for 18th most. I think I got that from Patricia Traina. So credit to Patricia Traina. 18th most, tied with the Philadelphia Eagles. So they have a decent amount of guys under contract, but a lot of them, we'll go through this a little later. It's not like these heavy hitters. They have a bunch of defensive tackles who are technically under their active contracts who I don't know if we want to see any snaps going into the 2025 season unless they take significant steps forward. And there are some cuts we'll go over in a little bit as well that can help free up even more cap space, because according to Ed Valentine's reporting over there at Big Blue View, the New York Giants, with a few moves and some restructures, can get their cap space up to 98.5 million, which would be massive for the spending power of Joe Schoen and the front office, obviously. And we'll go over those restructures and those moves in a little bit.
Yeah, you always get those kind of articles and thought processes during this time of the year, Nick. But ultimately, it's very rare a team will do that max to free up that max amount of space. I hope the Giants are not one of those teams right now. I do not want any restructures further to some of these contracts, and we'll take a look at why, specifically with the Andrew Thomas question and contract situation, but also even if you go about Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence, and you look at kind of their future cap situations in 2026 and 2027, when it comes to the dead cap and the money that's guaranteed and allocated there, I don't think the Giants should be a team that's dipping into the future cap right now to clear up cap space for the now. Obviously, no quarterback on the roster, no real hope of winning a Super Bowl in 2025, realistically speaking. And I don't think the Giants are going to do that personally, but it is option on the table, so we will go over it just in case they do want to make go crazy in free agency and make a big splash, a big few splashes here to kind of improve their roster more so than they have already. Somewhat similar, I would say, to the Brian Burns move, but not exactly, because he was a much younger player. But there are some obvious, I would say, potential casualties as we head into this thing, Nick. The first one to discuss is Graham Gano. This Graham Gano contract, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like a classic Gettleman. Like, we're like, he's like already an older player, hadn't been that injured at the time, but already an older player, a kicker. And then they like signed him despite not being a competing team to this massive extension. And they've just like done so much work on this deal since then, Nick. So much restructuring, so much bullshit that there's still so much dead cap tied to his contract. They should be able to get out of this at this point and free up that it's a big chunk of cap space they're allocating to him, and free that up so then like they can draft a kicker and pay him $800K against the cap. But they're not necessarily in that position fully yet. But there is an opportunity this offseason to get rid of Graham Gano and still create some salary cap space. So why don't you dive into that a little bit, and then some other guys that caught your attention?
Yeah, there's two guys mainly, and each of these releases would get the Giants to over 50 million in cap space. So we're talking about a pretty significant chunk of change, about 8 million in cap space. And the first one, like you said, is Graham Gano. If he's a pre-June 1st cut, the Giants can save 3.2 million on the cap. Post June 1 cut will be 4.41 million on the cap. And then there's defensive tackle Raheem Nunez-Roches. And he's a player who still carries some utility, especially since the New York Giants suck on the defensive line, and there's really no depth there. So it's a little precarious, but I think it's safe to say he's beyond 30. He's getting a little bit up there. I don't think he's a difference maker, and the Giants can save 3.6 million on the cap by designating him a pre-June 1 cut. And I'm looking at it. You have a lot of young defensive linemen. The Giants coaching staff likes some of these guys, whether it be Durden or Rogers or players like that. And again, these are players like off the cuff you don't necessarily want to rely on unless they take big steps forward. Guys like Chapman, I think you can rely on a little bit more, but he's a much different player than Raheem Nunez-Roches. But if you can save almost 4 million on the cap by releasing a 30-plus-year-old defensive lineman who isn't necessarily a difference maker, it's more of a guy who's just eating snaps up, I think you have to do it. So, and I hate to say that because I like Nacho, but he's more than likely going to be a cap casualty at this point, unless the Giants just don't think they can replace his value on the open market, which I would hope that you could with a younger, more explosive and more dynamic player who can impact the pass rush as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's a weird spot because I don't think, again, I want to make it clear, I don't buy into the idea of like the restructure Thomas, restructure Burns, all these players and create cap space. We don't need cap space really this offseason, in my personal opinion. We can use some help, try to fix some things the best we can, but do your best to just understand this is a process, in my opinion, at least if you're the Giants and you are not competing for a Super Bowl right now. And with that regard, like, do you need the cap space that you would get from Nacho? Not really. And is there anyone to replace him at that position that's going to be cheap in free agency? Almost definitely not. So then, like you said, Nick, you'd be relying on the young players currently on your roster, plus whoever you can bring in through the draft and free agency. It's a lot to ask for. I don't ultimately know if that's the direction they'll go. Now, Graham Gano, I would just get rid of him. I love Graham Gano. He was a good kicker for the Giants. Fine. I shouldn't say I love him. I like him. He's a good kicker for the Giants. Fine. I don't need to be allocating this much to a kicker on a team like this. I don't care. Get some guys. The Niners signed someone for their run. The Lions, I think, had to sign someone. Teams are shifting out kickers. The Chiefs had some kicker in while Bucker was hurt. We're not in a mood. I'm not in a position where I want to be spending $5 million on a kicker right now.
2.37% of the Giants cap is taken up by the kickers because they have two, because Jude McAtamney also is under contract as well, even though he's just a practice squad player most of the time.
Yeah. And also Gano's been hurt a lot as he gets older. He's an older, aging veteran who's been hurt.
I still can't believe what week 2 this past season still grinds my gears, man.
Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who's been hurt. Is he hurt the year before as well or no?
I think so. I think at times he's been hurt a decent amount, and he's trying to play through that injury. And we saw what happened in week 2 with that when he got injured off their Austin Eckler's kickoff return.
They basically lost the game because of it.
Yeah, and again, I'm not blaming Graham Gano per se. That was, in my opinion, a huge gaffe by Brian Daboll, who, to be frank, has been terrible with special teams decisions throughout his entire tenure here. Remember when he put a Dory Jackson as the kick returner, he ends up getting, or punt returner. And he's like, yeah, I do it again. He's the best punt returner. It's like, yeah, well, he was your number 1 cornerback as well. And that really screwed your defense over down the stretch of that season. So let's be judicious with our decision-making process and understand that, yeah, this guy might be our best punt returner, but he's also much more valuable to us as our starting freaking cornerback when you can put somebody else back there to return punts. But again, they didn't really have a punt returner because they tried that with Richie James. And what happened? The guy fumbled it twice in that Seattle game. Whatever. Absolute nightmare. Hopefully Brian Daboll can be better with his special teams decision-making moving forward.
Agreed. Because it's not like he offers that much more so far, at least outside of that. We're hoping that changes with the quarterback ability to maybe help maximize his play calling and design, which is possible. But yeah, so I think that's the easy one to me. Gano, I could get on board with Nacho too. I don't think they need the cap space necessarily, but if they can figure out a way to kind of create a competition that's not just, in my mind at least, young players on the interior defensive line, because they need a lot of guys there. It's just one they got really with Dexter Lawrence. So that'll be interesting. There's a couple other guys that like come to mind to me as potential cap casualties. Just they're not, you wouldn't be saving a lot with these players, Nick, but there's no really any dead cap tied to these decisions. So it's a clean cutout if you want to get out of these contracts. And they've been disappointing players. And those players are Cordell Flott, Josh Azudu, and Bellinger. I wouldn't put Bellinger in that at all. But the Giants have, the only reason I include him here is
Yeah.
because the Giants have not shown us that they're that interested in playing him. They played him more down the stretch when Theo was hurt. Hopefully they saw what we've seen, that he's somebody who's easily worth his contract and should never be in this conversation. Cordell Flott, someone who improved down the stretch, but Josh Azudu, like, it would not shock me at all if the Giants sign and draft enough offensive line competition that Josh Azudu is not making it past training camp.
I have no interest in cutting Flott or Bellinger.
I agree with that.
And you could save about $3 million with each, a little bit less than that. Azudu, I'm certainly open to it because I think the Giants will make the necessary investments into their tackle and guard depth and those positions just in general, depending on what they do with Greg Van Roten. And I'm just looking at Josh Azudu, and he's just on scholarship right now on a rookie contract. And I would rather get competent players that we can at least somewhat trust to put in there. So yes, I can see that if the Giants need that cap savings, but as you said before, it's unclear if they're going to like certainly need those cap savings this season. So it really depends on how Joe Schoen wants to attack this. If I'm Joe Schoen, though, I might want to spend a little bit in free agency because I don't have that much longer. So that may lead to the release of a Josh Azudu. That may lead to the release of a Gano and a Raheem Nunez-Roches. That's something else that we have to consider.
True. And then there's other contracts on here. Bobby Okereke and John Runyon, both those contracts with a ton of dead money assigned to them, structured in a way that neither will be able to be cut this year. They're both almost guaranteed to be on the roster. So don't consider those. The curious one to me is Devin Singletary, Nick. They really structured this in a weird way, the Giants. I guess what ended up happening was they were, in their minds at least, under enough of a salary cap crunch last year to get those offensive linemen in, to help, give Jones that one last chance to justify Shane's decision to sign him and build enough talent around him. I believe they also made the trade for Brian Burns, and that required a new contract and a lot of cap space allocated there. So they were tight in that sense, but there was one contract that they kicked the cap on. They kicked the can on, and it was this Devin Singletary contract. Because as you look into this thing, Nick, this current year, heading into this year, despite Tyrone Tracy stepping up and the deepest running back class we may see in a long time, to my opinion, the Giants could easily just go with Tracy and somebody they get in round 3, 4, or 5, and that would be great.
It's a deep class.
It's a deep class. Like, they'll be done. I'd be done there. Maybe even 2 guys on day 3, have a 3 rotation of talent, and I'm good there. But they won't be able to do that this season, the Giants, because the way they structured this Devin Singletary contract, he has a cap hit of $6.25 million, and they'd only save $250K by cutting him. So he won't be cut.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Pre-June.
But then if you do the post-June, you're gonna hurt yourself down the line. I think we'll just look at the pre-June. But yeah, they could save some cap a little bit more, and then they'd have more dead cap down the line. I don't think you want to have dead cap on Singletary past this year, though. So I think he'll just be on the under contract. He's a solid player, Nick. I'm not trying to say he's not. It's just an interesting, curious contract there from a cap space standpoint.
I think it was just, hey, we're losing Saquon Barkley. We need to get an insurance. We don't know what we're going to get in the draft. They didn't know they were going to land Tyrone Tracy Jr. I mean, it's crazy, though, when you look at some of these day 3 picks and these late 3rd round, like Bucky Irving last year.
Yeah.
Like Bucky Irving, to me, like that's somebody who is going to be one of the best running backs in the NFL.
He looks
so good on tape. He looks so good.
He didn't look that good at Oregon. He looked good, but he's somehow better in the pros.
I liked him at Oregon. He did not look like that. I don't think at Oregon. And I'm so happy that he's thriving down there in Tampa Bay, and Tyrone Tracy Jr. is thriving up here. So I'm fully on that train though too, man. If even if you don't resign Singletary, draft a running back on day 3 with this class, dude, because that could be a last year's class or another class. That could be a late day 2 value that you're getting on day 3 because this specific draft class at running back is so stacked. This episode is brought to you by Skims. Get your hands on the best underwear in the land. Look, I'm sure, gentlemen, you're a lot like me. You don't want your fit to be too compact, nor do you want to be swinging around like you're trying to destroy a piñata. You want everything in place. Comfort on a cloud with no ride-up. That is the ideal situation, and Skims provides that situation for us, gentlemen. They sent me a few pairs. I wear them to work. I wear them while I'm working out, and they are exactly what I'm looking for in my underwear. And Christmas is right around the corner. So grab a pair of Skims for someone in your life. Maybe that someone is you, and you want that comfortable underwear for your whole situation down there. So shop Skims Men's at skims.com. That's SKIMS.com. Let them know we sent you After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show, Big Blue Banter, in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. So visit skims.com to check that out and maximize your draw's comfortability. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the global leader in men's lifestyle and grooming. Every man knows the unbeatable feeling of a fresh barbershop shave. Now, what if I told you that you no longer have to wait weeks or even months between appointments to experience it? Introducing Manscaped's newest innovation, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver, the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of professional shave right into your home. Whether you're after that daily silky smooth finish or prefer to maintain a rugged 5 o'clock shadow, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is your go-to for precision and style every time. Head over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using code BIGBLUE for 20% off. Gentlemen, this has changed the grooming game for me, and I highly recommend it for you. Get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code BIGBLUE at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code BIGBLUE at manscaped.com.
Once we get to rounds 4, 5, 6, Nick, I am almost guaranteeing that my best player available on every single round will be a running back. I just know how these things play out in the draft. It was last year with Tyrone Tracy, and I believe there was a Estime who I had as high as ranked as well. And it's just like, I know it's going to happen again. I don't think it's even impossible, Nick, for the Giants to get a better running back than Tracy on day 3 of this class, given how deep this class is. And I love Tracy. That just shows how much talent there is at this position, specifically in this draft class. You got to draft into the strength of classes. And this is a position that is so valuable, in my mind at least, to draft, because it's so much more likely that you're going to get an actual NFL player out of the running back position when you draft it than a lot of these other positions.
What's going to happen with the kid from Boise State and Hampton, the kid from North Carolina? Do you think they'll like take a little slide, or I have to imagine the Boise State kid's going in the first round.
Just will go in the first round for sure. Yeah.
And I don't know if you watch Hampton.
I have not watched Hampton at all.
And that's the North Carolina running back, man.
Not Rodney Hampton's offspring, is it?
I don't think so. Okay. No, he is a physical, hard-nosed runner.
It's watched Scattaboo, who I actually like.
I got to watch him too.
Yeah, he's actually impressive to me. I know a lot of people are down on him NFL projection-wise, but as far as what I saw college-wise, he looks pretty sweet. But yeah, it's a stacked running back class. I mean, that's just the top of the class that we're discussing now. It goes really deep. So it's going to be an interesting situation. But for now, Devin Singletary's on that. And then one other thing I want to say about just their current cap space before we get into maybe some other questions, 2026, 2027 stuff, Nick, is the way this team is really set up right now and constructed from a roster construction standpoint. It really is cleaned out well in my mind. Like there's not that much fat to me on this roster. It's super trim. It's essentially 3 guys taking up 37% of their cap. Brian Burns, Andrew Thomas, and Dexter Lawrence. One is an all-pro defensive tackle, maybe the best player in the NFL from an impact standpoint, in Dexter Lawrence. Brian Burns, I loved his tape this year. I know fans are not super happy with the total numbers. Stats are really misleading when it comes to that position, and he was dealing with so many chips and so many difficult situations. I am happy with that contract, given his age and what he offers the team. And by the way, on Brian Burns, there were so many times this year, Nick, where I'm watching the tape, and I know you saw this too, and his effort level was better than almost anyone on that entire team, despite playing hurt the whole year through an injury that was so bad that people didn't even realize.
Yeah. I think it's very important to acknowledge, just because Dan and I, we watched this all 22, watch it again. We watched so much of this New York Giants team. There's 2 players on defense that come to mind when I just say effort is never an issue. Brian Burns, and I'm sure you probably know who the other one is.
Drew Phillips.
Drew is definitely up there too. I wasn't including the rookies because usually those guys always have effort. Micah McFadden.
Yeah.
McFadden's everywhere. And so is Brian. So is Drew. I would include Nubin in that as well.
Same.
Nubin is another player who just flies around. That's a good foundation of players to have when it comes to the effort. And Burns just getting that contract, playing through injuries on a shitty team, that says something to me about his football character and his character overall.
Exactly. He could have easily just checked out. He has his money, but he's a good team player, and he was hurt too, like really badly hurt. It was early in the season we started seeing him playing hurt on the injury report all the time, playing through it, never stopped playing despite being injured, and never stopped giving that effort. So I'm happy with that. And then the other one's Andrew Thomas. That's 37% of their cap. And it's interesting because it's cleaned out. Like this roster, we would want that, right? Those are all trench players. We've discussed in the past, you and I, Nick, we want them to be investing. The big money should be in the trenches. Like you should have those as your core players. But it's just not a lot else outside of that that's really just on this roster and signed throughout. And I'll say this I'll use this point just to I'll use this just to make this point, Nick. There's just 9 Giants under contract for 2027. Can you name them?
9 Giants under, so it would be the entire rookie class.
Yes.
So the entire rookie class, Brian Burns, is Andrew Thomas, and so it would be Malik, Drew, Tyler, Darius Muasau, who am I forgetting from? Tyrone Tracy Jr.
Well, you could just say that entire class.
Yeah, that entire class. And then so it would be, is Dex? I don't know if Dex is. Burns, Dex, Andrew Thomas.
Exactly. So it's the 3 people that we were just discussing that make up all that cap and the rookie class. And that's it. Like, it's just interesting to think about. Like, this is their core. This is the team they're building around. And they've essentially cleared it out to a spot where, like, they are very flexible outside of those 3.
I agree. Phoenix does not like that. I don't know if you're hearing that right now. He's barking like crazy. But I'll say this. I think that's a good point. And I don't believe, actually, no, I know it's like basically an objective fact. The Giants have not drafted that well. But now with Joe Shane's first draft coming up for her contract extension, that could change, which could lead to more players because he's going to be incentivized to retain the talent that he drafted. The thing is, how many of those players were actually talented from that first 2022 class? We don't really see too many of them play. Some of them are just riding pine. The only ones I think that could be extended are Micah McFadden. I would say Bellinger and Kayvon, obviously, but I would say Bellinger, but it doesn't seem like the Giants are as in love with them as we are. So I'm looking at that. I don't think Belton will be, right? Like Josh Zudu, no. Flott, probably not. That one's still a little bit up in the air. Wandale, definitely, I think.
I wouldn't say definitely.
No, I'm saying definitely in consideration. But I wouldn't say definitely either. I could see a team like loving Wandale Robinson and like a good team, like giving him a solid contract. I could see that, man. Just as a, like, not to, I don't think this is disrespectful, but as a specific type of player to fit a system. And I think he could be a good player in a better environment. I still think he's a good football player, even with the New York Giants, even though it doesn't really necessarily manifest in the stats. But yeah, man, I think some of those guys will be resigned, though. I can go through the breakdown if you want of the percentages.
Yeah.
Have you looked at this yet?
Yes.
Okay, so you looked at it. I wish we could do a poll with the audience right now. So would you have picked what? Okay, so the highest percentage of the salary cap that goes to a position is the edge. Would you have predicted that? Because there's only 2 edge rushers on the team.
Yeah, I would still predict it to the Burns contract.
The Burns contract, 14.45% of the Giants' salary cap in 2025 is allocated to Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, and that's it, because that's the entire edge room. The second is offensive tackle with 13.87% of the Giants' cap, and that is just between 3 offensive tackles. I included Azudu with the guards, so that is just Evan Neal, Andrew Thomas, and Jermaine Illuminor. Defensive tackle, that's 13.2% of the cap, and that is between 7 players. But the vast majority of that 13.12% is Dexter Lawrence. And then beyond this, dude, it's a significant drop-off. There is nothing allocated to the quarterbacks other than the dead cap of Daniel Jones, because there's no quarterbacks technically under contract at the moment. So the 4th position group that is absorbing the largest percentage of the Giants' cap in 2025 is linebacker, and that is mostly because of the Bobby Okereke contract. That is a 6.83% of the cap. You have any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, a lot of it, because like even if you just combine the positions, right? OT, OG, that's almost 20% of your cap, almost 1/5. Edge and D tackle is D line. That's 25% of your cap, almost 1/4. Yeah. Like they have 1/5 and 1/4 of their cap allocated to the trenches right now, which is something we like. They don't have a lot of cap space allocated to quarterback. They're in a nice, unique position where they don't have a lot of cap space allocated to receiver or cornerback. These are 2 positions, if you look across the NFL, or 3 positions, I should say, sorry, quarterback, the quarterback, receiver, and cornerback, where most teams have 15, 20% of their cap, more sometimes, allocated to each of those positions. The Giants are
8.87% between both of those positions, wide receiver and cornerback. Like, that's
right. And then you
not a
throw in
lot.
quarterback, and you're looking at probably one of the smallest percentages of cap allocation to those three positions. You could even say it the way you did, Nick, probably one of the smallest percentages just to those two positions. It gives the Giants opportunity, in my mind, to get another Burns type player, whether that be through free agency or trade, and make him like you have opportunities to build out here.
You and I both play fantasy football. This seems like a stars and scrubs type of approach.
It is. It's a very much so stars and scrubs type of approach.
And that's a fine approach if you are able to draft those scrubs, because in this reality, scrubs are just guys playing on their rookie contract, guys who have not had the opportunity to earn the money that they actually deserve. But with the New York Giants, since they can't really draft all that well, they're not locating players who deserve that money in the first place.
Right.
That's where the problem lies, is the depth and the drafting from Dave Gettleman to Joe Schoen has not given and provided the Giants enough players that deserve bigger contracts. That's a problem. Or those players who do deserve the bigger contracts, the Giants say sayonara to them and allow them to go and pursue those to other teams.
Correct. And it's interesting. I just want to make it clear for what Nick is discussing, stars and scrubs. He's referring to fantasy football auction style drafting, not snake, where you have a budget of 200, and a stars and scrubs approach would mean that you're spending a lot of big money on 2 or 3 players and then trying to get value in the $1 to $3 to $4 range. It is essentially what the Giants have done. They've allocated their 37% of their cap to 3 players, and they're trying to locate talent at these other positions while not allocating as much cap space to those positions. So far, they failed on it. And I think that ultimately is like kind of the difference in when things work and when they don't work. I mean, obviously, it's not totally, because it's not like fantasy. Like, there's no position in fantasy as important to winning as quarterback is to actually winning in the NFL. Like, you can win without a quarterback or a running back or a receiver in fantasy, but it's a similar type strategy.
Yeah, the Giants, their secondary makes up for slightly over 5% of their entire cap. Like, they're spending nothing on that. And it's because they drafted Cordell Flott, and they drafted Deontay Banks, and they drafted Drew Phillips, and they drafted Tyler Nubin, and they signed Jason Pinnock to a small deal, even though he's a free agent now. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants go out and try to land somebody with bigger money. I got to look at the free agency and see who is available and who is out there. But I'm sure they're cognizant of the fact that their secondary was not great last year. And it's a system that kind of needs these quick reacting, very aware and smart cornerbacks to be playing in it.
If the Giants are to make a big splash, I would assume it will be at corner. Honestly, that seems to be the most likely position they would splash.
What about defensive tackle?
I would prefer it at defensive tackle. I would prefer it at guard with Trey Smith over corner personally. But all 3 of those are in play. And I think you're right. Like, I don't think they're as unlikely to make a big play in free agency. And I don't think they're as unlikely to just be quiet in general in free agency, because they do have a setup here where they don't really have much cap space allocated to anyone but 3 players, not including a quarterback. So you're not even talking about like some of these teams, man, like all the teams who just re-signed like Love and some of these more recent quarterback contracts to like they're allocating $50 million in cap space to those players. That's like almost combined. That's a little bit. Okay, let's say it's like 2 of the 3 players we mentioned, the core players, Thomas, Dex, and Burns. That's 2 of their salaries combined, right? So the Giants are in this clean position from a cap standpoint. I think Joe Schoen has certainly put them in that spot.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the free agents too. I mean, there are some names out here. I just don't know, like Byron Murphy, cornerback from the Vikings, DJ Reed, cornerback from the Jets, Carlton Davis, cornerback from the Lions. So there are some corners. Mike Hilton from the Bengals. Trey White is a little bit too old and just injured at this point. But there are names, and then there's defensive linemen too. Now that I think the Giants don't even need to like spend up massive on the defensive. I would like that, but I don't know if they're in a position to do that at the moment. But if you can get like one of those medium range contracts and just find that nice 2, it doesn't even need to be a 1B, a nice 2 to Dexter Lawrence, that can go a long way. Because I don't think Dexter Lawrence has played with anybody comparable or even in his stratosphere since the Giants traded Leonard Williams, which wasn't that long ago, but that's an entire season of playing with somebody who ideally should be like your 3rd or 4th defensive lineman next to you.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. And I think we'll look into that. Those are the positions as we go forward toward free agency. Those are positions we'll be targeting for sure. A few other interesting notes when it comes to the Giants cap situation here. Just some interesting spots for 2026 as we look ahead 2 years down the line. The first being the Giants will have the 8th most cap space in the NFL, are currently set to have the 8th most with 140 million in cap space. It just kind of goes to show what we've been discussing. Not a lot of contracts under the books. They're pretty clean as we head into this thing. And the two contracts that stand out the most to me are the John Runyon and Bobby Okereke contracts for 2026. I'm talking about. In both of those contracts, Nick, the Giants can get out of each of those with $9 million for Okereke and $9.25 million for Runyon of cap savings if they cut those players. Runyon would have $2.5 million dead cap. Okereke would have $5.5 million dead cap, a little bit more on that front for Okereke. They've pushed some of that contract down the line. But the Runyon situation, it ends up ultimately being more of a 2-year deal for the Giants with Runyon. He's going to have to stay healthy this year, and he's going to have to prove himself, I think, to kind of be back on for 2026.
Which is excellent. I mean, he's still 27 years old. He's still young enough. And I saw PFF recently came out and said John Runyon was the worst signing for the New York Giants in free agency. And it's like, you could say that because he was slightly overpaid. And I think when the Giants signed him, we came on here, I did my film analysis, and I wasn't really impressed with his overall skill set, but it was clear to me that he was such an upgrade over anything the Giants had at guard in 2023 that we were like, okay, this is fine. You slightly overpay. You don't break your back over, but you slightly overpay for competency. And that's what I think he is. I think he's an average, competent starter. And I'll take that on the offensive line rather than going through the Marcus McKeithans of the world and putting out these practice squad players and asking your quarterback to play with that. Your quarterback who is already has his own deficiencies to play behind that offensive line. So it could be viewed as a negative contract, but I don't think it was an irresponsible contract.
Not at all. And I don't think he was named that by PFF, whatever.
It's just content that they're trying to.
They need someone to put out there. But exactly. I think so far through year one, despite the injury, I'm more hopeful about his contract than Mark Lewinsky's, for example.
Agreed. 100%.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens on that front. I just thought it was interesting how that's structured. They might be moving on from both Okereke and him, depending on how they play this year. At least they have the option to, though. They don't have a lot of dead cap allocated to either player as they move forward. So they're going to have a lot of freedom. And I think the final thing I want to discuss, Nick, when it comes to the Giants salary cap situation.
I want to do one thing before that, just because you brought up Okereke, and I think this is important. Yes. We know since Shane Bowen is coming back, and it's not like the Giants are just going to purely draft just for Shane Bowen, but we understand that Shane Bowen's system puts a heavy burden on the linebackers. And if the Giants can get away from Okereke's contract after this season, and he might not be retained after that anyways, because he'll be post 30, Micah McFadden is going to be a free agent soon. Is linebacker one of the many low-key needs here on this Giants team?
Without a doubt. And I think it's been a need for a while now. I don't necessarily know if they're going to try to even flirt with the idea of making Okereke like a long-term fixture, like a Bobby Wagner type. I think a lot of that would depend on if the Giants get good and they start winning and they value that leadership and that, knowledge, just being in the system. But we don't even know what the system will be as we move forward, if it'll continue to be Shane Bowen's past this year. So it is interesting. And then you got to think about as a GM, like, do I want to try to find that guy in the draft that can be that guy for me? Or do they believe McFadden can be that guy?
It could be one of those things where you just find somebody who he played with in Tennessee and you give him like a small to mid-level contract and you bring him in and he just solidifies that. I think we might be a little early on that because you have two starters at the linebacker position, but it's something I want to keep in the back of my mind because it could go the draft as well, find a very smart linebacker. Maybe they think it could be Muasau, who I still think doesn't necessarily have the physical tools to thrive as a linebacker, but he's a rookie, so I don't want to give him too much shit for that. But yeah, I just think looking at the roster and looking at the fact that they can get away from that contract and that Bobby Okereke did take a step back, I am wondering if they're looking like, hey man, we still probably should add another body to the linebacking group.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see as they move forward with that. But one final thing I did want to touch on before we wrap up as we move forward. And we can also mention, I think you guys know most of these, but they have free agents, the Giants. Darius Slayton's not under contract this offseason. Isaiah Simmons, Dory Jackson, and Ojulari being the big ones there. Manhurts as well. Van Roten as well. Sorry, he was a starter. That's another big one. So that within the cap space frame that we're talking about, where if they get to 50 million, if they cut Gano and Nunez Roches, or if they don't, the 44 million, they're going to have to consider also potentially re-signing those players. I mean, we'll see what happens on that front. It seems like they're all likely to move on besides maybe Slayton, I would think.
So like, looking at these guys, so your punter too, Jamie Gillen.
Even he's probably gone. Yeah.
I think Adoree Jackson, I think you said him too. But I'm looking at that group of players. The Giants could use all of them except for maybe like Isaiah Simmons. Like I like Simmons, but like the Giants, it doesn't seem like any of the defensive coordinators who have used him have really found a way to fully maximize his skill set. I think that is also because the Giants have been so bad offensively. I've made that point several times on the podcast, not to beat a dead horse. But Ojulari, I would love to have Ojulari back, even though he's had all those injuries. I would love to have Chris Manhertz back. That would be a very cheap contract. And then Slayton, and I mean, depending on what you do on the offensive line, I look at Van Roten and I say, yeah, I'm open to that. And I know he wants to be on the East Coast since he just had a kid and he's from Long Island. And Adoree, too. Adoree's another player that I'm looking at. And I'm like, I think I would take him back. I'd rather give Adoree Jackson a small level contract and bring him back than spend huge on a player in free agency and get maybe like marginally better play from it.
I agree with you on that, especially given where the Giants are at currently as a franchise. So maybe we should be more open to the idea of resigning some of these players just for the simple point of what you said. You're going to get more value out of them. And it could be as simple as that at times. Like I'm not against that at all. We'll see what happens. Obviously, Slayton would be the exception. I think he'll probably garner a sizable contract just given the market. Like Gabe Davis made more than Saquon Barkley last year.
Is Darius Slayton better than Gabe Davis?
I think so, but
I think so
very high on Darius Slayton, and I don't think it's a fair thing for me to evaluate because I don't watch Gabe Davis tape, but I watch Slayton tape.
Same. Yeah. I think Darius Slayton can go to a solid football team, earn a significant role in their 11 personnel package and be respectable. He'll have his drops every now and again.
He will.
But he'll also make his plays.
He's not great at the catch point by any means. Like he's not a perfect receiver by any means, but he gets in and out of his breaks well. He runs routes well, and he has speed. And he's good. He's got breakaway speed too.
And he's going to block his ass off too.
And that, I mean, like you're not getting that out of most players on the market. You weren't getting that out of Gabe Davis, I don't think. The Jaguars were getting that last year personally. So it'll be very interesting to see. But one final thing I want to discuss, it's a big one. We'll end on this. It's a curious situation. The Andrew Thomas contract as we move forward. Obviously take things into consideration and consider all the context, which is, man, is it hard to find a left tackle in the NFL? Man, is it hard to even get lucky and draft one? You could use big, or we've seen teams use top 5 picks, the Giants being one of them, top 7 picks, and then not even get competent play, let alone good play at that position. It's a tough position to find. It's a tough position to play in the NFL level. But the Andrew Thomas situation gets a little bit more interesting as we move forward from a contractual standpoint, Nick, because here's a look at, so he signed, for those who don't know, in 2023, July of 2023, he signed a 5-year, $117.5 million extension. He's currently now 26 years old, which is really young for an offensive lineman, honestly. He's been great when he's played. He's played hurt in 2023. He was playing hurt the whole second half of the year, played well. But he's also missed a lot of games in the last 2 years, Nick. He played just 6 games last year, missed 11. We're at 17 now. He played just 10 games the year before. And he's missed 3 games, but he did play 16 game full season 2020 and 2022, missed 3 games in 2021. He's now had 2 ankle surgeries. Yeah. And he's also had a Lisfranc surgery, which is happening this is the injury from this year. Some have said that's a career-altering surgery. I don't know if I take any of that information. I know it's the dreaded Lisfranc, but I think every athlete reacts to things differently. Man, J.K. Dobbins, is that not the best example? Like his career should be over based on his surgeries, but he looked explosive this past year for the Chargers. So injuries, it's interesting. I don't want to predict them, but the contract situation, Nick, it gets really interesting as we move forward because the structure of the contract, it's impossible to get out of. I didn't know this until I started digging into the Giants salary cap situation. They've structured this Thomas contract in a certain way, restructuring it, pushing cap hit back to clear up space for Daniel Jones and Barkley 2 years ago, to clear up space for this O-line rebuild this past year and Brian Burns. Fine, he's a core player. I don't mind it. But they've structured it in a way, Nick, where it is impossible to get out of this contract until 2027. The dead money on the books for 2026, that's not this offseason, the next offseason, is $23 million in dead cap if they were trying to cut him next offseason. And his cap hit's just $21 million for 2026. So they've structured in a way where he is on the team for sure until at least the 2027 season. And with that injury history, is it someone that the Giants should be worried about having all that cap space allocated to?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, they shouldn't be worried just because injuries are involved. But look, I'm comfortable with this situation. You can get out of it after 2 seasons, after 2025 and 2026. And I think in 2027, the Giants could save 18.5 or 18.6 million on the cap with just suffering a 4.7 million dead cap hit if you wanted to move on from a 28-year-old star left tackle. And the only reason I think the Giants would want to do that is if he literally is just injured throughout the next 2 seasons. Right. And even if he is, say if he plays like 8 games, say if he plays between the next 2 years, 15 games, that's not great total.
Yeah.
That's not great. Right. But if those 15 games are 80% of what Andrew Thomas is, the Giants may be incentivized to keep him under contract because I don't know if they'll have an answer. They should be. And let's look at some of the other tackles.
Well, I shouldn't say they should be because then now we're saying they should be despite 4 years in a row of injuries.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. It really depends on those injuries, depends on the state of the team. It depends on a lot of different things. And if Thomas is injured that much, the Giants probably going to suck. So Joe Schoen won't even be here. But let's just, for the sake of the argument, say Joe Schoen drafted Evan Neal. The development has sucked. He's drafted Josh Azudu, tried him a tackle, has sucked. Why am I going to sit here and say, no, let's get rid of like the one tackle that we've identified as an organization, a franchise, and ship him out at 28 years old? It's tough. That's a tough sell, man. It's a very tough sell. But again, money speaks a lot. It really depends on those injuries at that point, because I think he is signed through 2029. He's signed through 20. He's the only player who is signed through 2029 right now. And the Giants can get out of it in 2027. But I really hope they don't want to get out of it, because I love watching him play, and he's an effective player when he is healthy. It's just tough to say because we're talking about theoretical injuries that are going to happen in the future.
Yeah, and hopefully that's the case that Nick is discussing. I don't want him to go anyway, and it's so hard to find a tackle. I just don't think it's worth the risk. But something to bring up because they put themselves in an interesting spot there. All right, we've talked about the Giants 2025, 26, and 27 salary cap situations here. We've discussed how they're kind of a very concentrated cap moving into the future with just 3 core players. They have a lot of flexibility at wide receiver, at corner, at D tackle. They don't have a lot of cap space allocated. They have a little bit of an edge there, I think, from that standpoint. And we'll have to see how they approach this thing moving forward, because I think Schoen will probably keep it pretty. I don't think he's going to go against what he said he would. And I don't think he's going to just go all in like that 2016 free agency the Giants did, with Gettleman. I think, was that Gettleman at that point? No, it was Jerry Reese, his final last hurrah. I don't think that's going to happen. So it'll be interesting to see how they play this moving forward, what positions get more invested in. And thanks again to everybody tuning in to Big Blue Banter podcast. Have a great rest of your week or weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.